Absolutely. Here's a 500-word story-style article on the topic. 5 ways to live happily in old age. Secrets to a joyful life. At 82, George was known as the guy with the big smile in his retirement community. Whether he was walking his dog, chatting with neighbors, or teaching the kids in the neighborhood how to fly a kite, George carried an undeniable lightness. One morning, as he sat on a bench overlooking the lake, a young man passing by asked him, "What's your secret? You seem so happy all the time." George laughed and replied, "It's not a secret, really, just a few small choices each day." Here are George's 5 favorite ways to live happily in old age. 1. Stay grateful. George began every morning with a gratitude list. He didn't write long essays, just 3 simple things: his morning coffee, the sound of birds outside his window, and the warmth of his favorite sweater. He believed that happiness started with recognizing what was already good. Gratitude is like a daily vitamin for the soul, he said. 2. Keep moving. He wasn't training for marathons, but George made sure to stay active. A daily walk with his dog kept his joints limber and his spirits high. He also took a weekly Tai Chi class, not just for balance, but for the peace it brought. Motion is lotion, he joked, winking. You stop moving, you start rusting. 3. Build relationships, not just routine. George believed that happiness thrived in connection. Every Thursday, he hosted a game night with friends. Sundays were for family dinners where stories flowed and laughter echoed. He also made time to check in on friends who lived alone. The heart needs people the way the body needs food, he said. You have to feed it regularly. 4. Keep learning something new. Even in his 80s, George remained curious. He had recently taken up watercolor painting and was learning how to use a tablet. He said it wasn't about mastering anything. It was about staying mentally alive. If your brain has a hobby, it doesn't have time to be bored, he explained. 5. Choose joy every day. For George, joy wasn't always spontaneous. It was often a choice. He chose to forgive, to let go of what he couldn't control, and to find the humor in life's messes. When a neighbor backed into his mailbox, he laughed and said, "Guess I needed a new one anyway." That mindset, he believed, was the true secret to a happy old age. As the sun dipped lower, George stood stretched and smiled at the young man. "Getting older isn't the end of joy," he said. "It's the chance to really understand it." Then he picked up his dog's leash and strolled back toward his cottage, whistling a tune, his heart as light as the breeze. Happiness in old age doesn't come from grand achievements or perfect circumstances. It comes from how we choose to see and live each day. And as George shows us, joy is always within reach when we open our hearts to it. Want this turned into a voiceover sample? I can help. Just pick a voice: Alloy, Echo, Fable, Onyx, Nova, or Shimmer. Sure thing. Here's a continuation of the story with an additional 500 words, diving deeper into George's world and the emotional richness of aging joyfully. George's life hadn't always been easy. He had faced his share of loss. His wife, Helen, passed away 10 years ago after a long illness. At first, he didn't think he'd smile again. The silence in the house was unbearable, and the days felt empty. But something she had once told him kept echoing in his heart. "Don't waste your life waiting for sadness to pass. Carry me with you and keep going." It took time, but he did just that. He allowed himself to grieve, deeply and honestly. He cried in the garden they once tended together, cooked her favorite recipes even when they made him emotional, and kept her photo by the door so he could say good morning and good night. Grief never left completely, but it softened. Over time, it became less about pain and more about gratitude for the love they shared, the memories they built, and the strength she left behind in him. He also found comfort in routine. Every Monday, he visited the local library. The staff knew him by name, and he always had a book recommendation or a friendly joke ready. He found that engaging with the community, even in small, familiar ways, helped him feel grounded. Tuesday mornings were reserved for the community garden, where he helped plant herbs and vegetables alongside other retirees. Getting his hands in the dirt reminded him of his childhood summers and gave him a sense of being part of something still growing, still alive. George's joy didn't come from ignoring reality, but from choosing how to respond to it. He made it a mission to uplift others. There was a new widower down the street, Arthur, who had withdrawn into himself after his wife's death. George showed up with fresh-baked cookies one day and just sat with him. No pressure, no platitudes, just quiet companionship. Over time, their visits became weekly. Arthur began smiling more, even laughing, and together they discovered a mutual love for jazz music. George believed that happiness grew when it was shared, and that part of living joyfully was helping others find their light again. He also knew how important it was to stay open to new experiences. When his granddaughter invited him to a dance recital at her school, he not only attended, he joined the dance floor during the grandparent dance. He wasn't graceful, but he was joyful. He let himself be silly, be present, be in the moment. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about fully living it. One evening, George wrote a note in his journal. Getting old isn't about winding down. It's about showing up with laughter, with love, and with wonder. I'm not done yet, not by a long shot. He folded the note, tucked it into a book, and placed it on his nightstand. A reminder for tomorrow and every day after. Let me know if you'd like this next part turned into a voiceover too. Happy to help bring George's story to life with the voice of your choice. Of course. Here's another 200-word paragraph that wraps up George's story beautifully while reinforcing the theme of joyful aging. As spring arrived, George found himself spending more time outdoors, soaking in the warmth of the sun and the laughter of children playing nearby. Nature had always been a balm for his soul, and now, more than ever, he appreciated the little things. A blooming daffodil, the scent of fresh-cut grass, the distant hum of a lawnmower. These everyday miracles reminded him that joy didn't need to be loud or extravagant. It lived in the quiet, gentle details of life. One afternoon, as he sat under a blooming cherry tree, a young girl from the neighborhood approached him and asked, "Are you old?" He chuckled and replied, "Yes, and it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me." She looked puzzled, so he leaned closer and whispered, "You get to know what really matters." Then he smiled and handed her a flower. That moment stayed with him. To George, happiness in old age wasn't about holding on to the past. It was about living fully in the present. And with each day, each connection, and each small act of kindness, he proved that aging gracefully wasn't just possible. It was deeply, beautifully fulfilling. Let me know if you'd like this part voiced too. Just pick your voice.